going to talk to you about borderline personality disorder.
In order for someone to be diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, they must meet the criteria in the DSM-5. If you think you or someone you care about has borderline personality disorder, please see a professional. Here are 2 books that I found extremely helpful in learning about and understanding this disorder.
I think if someone has been diagnosed, the best treatment would be dialectical behavioral therapy, because this disorder can be very difficult to treat. It's generally thought to come from traumatic experience at a very early age, abandonment at a very early age. That's why we say that with children, the first 3 years of a child's life are critical for bonding with a parent. So if you have a child and in that child's first 3 years of life, they've been bounced around, this relative keeps them, this relative keeps them, this friend keeps them, a neighbor has them, and they haven't really bonded with their mother or a parent or a caregiver, that is one way that you can create a person who has this disorder. Sometimes people think that a child who's that young isn't going to remember anything, but yet your brain is wiring around the experiences that you have at that early age. That child has the potential to develop some type of personality disorder, which is a lifelong struggle. You don't want anybody to have to live their lives like that. And not only that, parenting that child is probably going to have many, many challenges. And by the way, you can't diagnose a person with borderline personality disorder before they're considered an adult. However, if you've worked with a lot of kids or you've worked with a lot of teenagers, you can see some things that start to stand out. The one thing that's a red flag for me is when I see a kid whose eye contact is off. Let's say, for example, I'm working with a kid who's disrespected their teacher. If you tell them, look at me, they may not stare holes into you. Like, they might look away and then look back at you, but they can still hold eye contact with you. When there's a kid that has really strange eye contact, it can kind of look like you're flashing a flashlight in their eyes. Their eyes might start to do this, or their eyes can start to kind of roll or do some things that are really all over the place, and they can't look at you. They don't want to look at you. That's usually a big clue for me that there's a possibility that there's been a break in the bonding between the child and that parent. Or there was something that happened in some very critical early years of that child's development. One of the things that I do is I try to help the kid to develop some eye contact, because the eyes are the window to the soul. I mean, I'm sure you've heard that saying, but there's some real truth in that. When I'm giving them a directive, like it's not okay to hit your teacher, I want to reach that child. I want them to take that in and not just totally avoid it. So that's kind of a good place to start. You want to try to correct some of those bonding issues as early as possible, so that their brain development can wire and maybe reprogram around more positive, stable experiences. If you are in a relationship with someone, or friends with, or in contact, or working with someone who has borderline personality disorder, it's going to be difficult because it affects the personality. Because of the society that we live in, sometimes bad things happen. So there are a lot of broken families out there. We see this more and more and more. Now, in order to correct borderline personality disorder, that can take years of therapy, possibly. Okay, so What does borderline personality disorder look like? The number one thing that stands out for me is a fear of abandonment. They sort of have a different lane in which they're operating from. Some of them have some very sophisticated systems to deal with their personality disorder. So let's talk about romantic relationships real quick, because in romantic relationships there is sort of this attachment. Because remember, with a borderline personality disorder, generally there was a break in the attachment process, and as human beings we have to attach to be healthy. So when you are in a romantic relationship, there are attachment hormones that are released in your brain. Otherwise there would never be families. There would never be strong family units. So that's critical. So in a romantic relationship, you might experience some of the same feelings because you are attaching and you're bonding to that person. But with someone with borderline personality disorder, they're trying to find someone to attach to because of that strong, overwhelming, severe abandonment component. It's terrifying to them. It feels very, very scary to them. So they're always sort of looking for their mommy. I mean, I'm saying it that way because that's the best way to understand it. Where's my mommy? Where's my mother? Where's that bond? Where's that person that's going to fulfill this emptiness? Because they usually have a deep, chronic feeling of emptiness inside because of that attachment issue. So they're constantly looking for someone to attach to that's going to sort of save them. It's more severe and it's more detrimental to their personality and how they interact with the world and people on a daily basis. So one thing that borderlines generally do is they test people because they want to see, are you going to abandon me? If I push the limits with you, will you still be there? Stable, like a mother's unconditional love. Will you give me that unconditional love no matter what I do to you? Sometimes they can be very selective with who they decide that they're going to truly attach to because they want that need met. Sometimes people with borderline personality disorder can do self-harming behaviors, like with maybe cutting, hitting their hands, trying to break their hands, or hitting their heads, or doing things like that. Sometimes they may self-mutilate or do those kinds of things because they may not feel real, or they may be in a dissociative state because sometimes they can sort of dissociate. And it's almost like they're watching themselves from outside of themselves, sort of thing, or they can feel so empty. Sometimes cutting can make them sort of feel real again. It can make them feel like, hey, I'm here. They can do a lot of suicide ideation or make threats of suicide. Sometimes the suicide threats could be to keep someone from abandoning them. If they're testing you and raising the boundaries, what all can I put you through to make you rescue me and to stay with me? No one can really meet that need. They usually have unstable personal relationships because of how the disorder affects them. They also do something called splitting, black and white thinking, either I love you or I hate you, like you're the greatest person in the world and now I can't stand you. There is an issue with their self-image, stemmed from a deep-seated feeling of emptiness. And when you're bonding in those early stages of your childhood with someone, it helps you to develop a self. You know, there's a such thing as in psychology called object permanence, where it's like, are you still here? You can see like a 1-year-old or 1.5-year-old will kind of test boundaries with you. Like they might walk away from you for a while and explore a room, and then they come back to their caregiver, and that's really, really important for a child's development. It's just a way for them to test out the world and see that it's safe and that you're still here. there's a big difficulty with self-image. So a lot of times people with borderline personality disorders will attach themselves to some sort of image, some sort of group, for example. This is who I am, because it gives them a clear identity. You know, sometimes there's a lot of self-hatred underneath because it gives them clarity and safety, and it gives them something to hold on to. Okay, so we've talked about frantic efforts to avoid abandonment, which can also make it difficult to have a relationship with them, because they may go to extremes if they think that you're gonna leave them. Like they might have to keep checking by to see, are you still there? Are you still there? Are you still there? Because if you're not in there right here, they may feel like it's almost like you've just disappeared. So they might have to check frequently or call you 100 times. Are you still there? Are you still there? Just to check, to make themselves feel better. They usually have an area that they really act out in. It could be binge eating, it could be reckless driving, it could be drug use. We talked about how they can feel a chronic sense of emptiness, bottomless pit, because of those intense rages that a borderline can go into, or that extreme irritability that looks similar to bipolar. Sometimes they can be misdiagnosed, but with borderline personality disorder, there has to be some other things going on too. Borderlines can be extremely charming. Some people say that they're extremely manipulative. I don't know that they see themselves as being manipulative, or that they understand exactly what you mean by that. They're just trying to cope. Sometimes they can go into deep states of depression, deep states of anxiety. They can have intense, uncontrollable anger at times that can cause them to have problems in relationships. You can end up having to walk on eggshells to try not to trigger them from going into a rage. It can be difficult to be in a good, healthy, strong relationship. They might be treating that person very poorly, or they might be acting out, or they may be doing things to really hurt that person or confuse that person or make that person feel bad. But then with other people, they're still sort of building this rapport, kind of testing out a few other people, so they might be showing them the charming, sweet, innocent side, or maybe they just haven't been, that part of them hasn't been triggered. Sometimes they may isolate the person that they're attached to because they are afraid of abandonment. They don't want that person to leave them. They don't want that person to get attached to other people. You know, don't take my person away. This is my person. And they may do things like making that person look really bad to other people, when really it's the borderline that's doing some tactics to push other people away from their person. Or if you decide to confront the borderline in front of these people that they have done all these wonderful things for, because they need these people to be there just in case they decide that they want to attach to them, it can make you sort of look like, are you crazy? Like, I'm not seeing this side of this person. Why are you being mean to them? And the thing that usually gets them into therapy is maybe there's been a trigger, or maybe they've had a breakup, or you know, something a lot of times will trigger them to get the help that they need. So they have to want it and really want to get better. If you have a family member who has that disorder, you also have to protect yourself so that you can stay in a healthy and strong place as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful to somebody. I hope that we can continue to do research and make strides to completely cure this disorder. Please give me a thumbs up, hit my subscribe button. So enjoy your day. Bye.